Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Hot Seat Automotive Podcast. Your buddy CJ here. We're talking about all things automotive industry, car guy hobby. We talk about cars, all the things automotive enthusiasts love talking about. This is the place to be for real gearhead talk, right here on Hot Seat Automotive Podcast. Guys, give me a like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Love my subscribers. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful for each and every one of you. Leave me comments. As you know, I will respond to all the comments I can, guys. If you're new to the channel, welcome. You are welcome here. Car guys, car girls, automotive enthusiasts, we're talking about all the things that matter most to us, whether it's the automotive hobby, whether it's industry developments, new regulations, new cars, old cars, classic cars, exotic cars. Listen, we really have a lot of fun around here, and we keep it focused on real gearhead talk, as I mentioned. So thank you so much for joining tonight, folks. And tonight's episode is really special. And, you know, when I think about iconic cars, guys, if I were to say to you black Trans Am, you might think about Smokey and the Bandit. You might think about Knight Rider and Kit, David Hasselhoff. Come on. When I think about a Ferrari, I think about like a red Ferrari, a 308. You know, I think about Magnum PI. Oh, gosh. So many iconic cars over the years, right? But if I were to say to you, little blue car with gold wheels, universally, without exception, every one of you would say, in response, Subaru WRX. The little blue car, all-wheel drive with the gold wheels. How iconic is this car? Subaru WRX is an important car in our hobby. It is an automotive enthusiast icon. It is a motorsports icon. It has a significance for the past, I'd say quarter of a century, particularly here in the U.S., for our hobby. So let's go ahead and get right into this. As you know, here on Hot Seat Automotive Podcast, we look at things together, and we have a lot of fun doing it. So check this out. This is the little blue car with the high performance and the gold wheels. This is the Subaru WRX, in this case, an STI, fitted with the roll cage and everything. But guys, let's talk about what the WRX is. So just a few basics. You know, this car came out in 1992 as an Impreza, originally dating back to the Subaru Impreza platform. Okay. This car's had a heck of a run. They're making them right up through today, 2024 model year. Okay. We're talking about turbo fours. Okay. These are 4-cylinder, horizontally opposed, also known as boxer engines. As I mentioned, all turbocharged. The WRX trim has the stiffer suspension, the more performance-oriented, as opposed to the base WRX. Then there's a WRX STI, which is Subaru Technica International. The STIs are the ones with the performance-tuned engines and even stiffer suspensions and some more aggressive race-inspired, rally-inspired features to them, including the larger wings, so on and so forth. But, you know, before we talk about this car, we've got to go back in time, guys. Before we really talk about what the WRX is, let's talk about what Subaru was. So, as we often do on Hot Seat Automotive Podcast, we're going to go back in time, and I invite you on a journey together with me. So, guys, what I want to say is one of the interesting things about Subaru, when I think about what it's become in our hobby with the advent of the WRXs, the significant following that the Subaru WRXs and the STIs have, not just in the United States, but more broadly, I find it fascinating to go back. Go back to the 70s, 80s, and even the early 90s, particularly in the US. This is what Subaru was all about. Certainly the all-wheel drive, but these were what I'll call sort of obscure Japanese cars for those that were into the all-wheel drive element. These cars were anything but, you know, sports or performance cars. in the United States. If you grew up as an automotive enthusiast in the 70s, 60s, 70s, or 80s, you were probably not a Subaru enthusiast. You probably bought a Subaru. Real talk, you probably bought a Subaru back then out of utility and necessity. I'm just giving it to you straight. And I think this will help build the case, if you will, and help build what I'm trying to communicate to you, which is that perhaps the most fascinating thing about the WRX is how it completely changed perception of the Subaru brand, and actually how it pivoted from being a car of utility and function for families, and as daily transportation with some utility, all weather, to a car that attracted a whole new generation of automotive enthusiasts, performance enthusiasts, high rev tuners, guys who are really heavily into motorsports. That's what's happened in the past 25 years. From obscurity and functional utility for a small fraction, dare I say, of the market, to pivoting from that to an automotive enthusiast car. The WRX is an enthusiast's car, particularly in the STI trim. But that didn't happen overnight. Something else I want to look at with you guys, and this kind of builds the case that Subaru was always made some oddities. Subaru did not, follow the beaten path, let's just say. Look at this vehicle, the Subaru Brat, all-wheel drive. This thing did not look like any other pickup truck or car on the road. You can't compare it to like an El Camino, or Ford Ranchero. You can't really compare it to a Jeep. It's got a pickup truck styled body. It's got seats out back, rearward facing. Okay, it's a 2-seat cabin. Now, unfortunately, not a lot of these brats survived. I think a lot of them rotted away. But this was a bit of an oddity back in the day. Like, this wasn't your typical pickup truck driver. This wasn't your typical, dare I say, Jeep person or off-roader. Like, this was a bit of a niche vehicle, So I claim that was the Subaru story. 60s, 70s, 80s, early 90s. Subaru was anything but, a motorsports or automotive enthusiast brand in the United States. I'm not saying they didn't have a following, because they did, but it wasn't the hot car. It wasn't the performance car. It was, hey, look, there's a Subaru Brat. That's kind of weird. Oh, look, your mom has a Subaru wagon, all-wheel drive. That's cool. Must be good in the snow. I mean, that's what Subaru was. And I think, as I always say, context is everything. What changed? I think a couple things changed. That we need to talk about. So let's take a look at this. As you know, on this channel, we look at these things. We talk about them a bit. So if we look at motorsports going back to the 60s and the 70s and particularly the 80s, this is where Subaru, I think, really began to bridge the gap and to come up with something that really caught on, not just in the US, of course, but globally, perhaps globally first, and then ultimately to the US. It's through their motorsports heritage and the World Rally Championship abroad in motorsports where Subaru began to develop these capabilities, this reputation for really having off-road rally performance engineering, race engineering that was now associated with the brand. And I think if we fast forward a bit into the 80s and we look at the legacy, the Subaru legacy really has a legacy, dare I say, in rally and in global motorsports as a car and a program that had a lot of fits and starts, certainly tried real hard, established Subaru's credibility in the off-road motorsports performance realm. It didn't win a lot of, podiums, I'll say. It didn't win a lot of hardware, as in, gold, silver, or maybe even bronze. But I think Subaru learned a lot in this era, and I think the brand continued to evolve and develop a significance, as well as their engineering acumen and their desire to do better in motorsports, would be my read on it. Up to and leading to the Impreza. So let's take a look at this guy, because this was really, anyone who knows Subaru knows this was the game changer. So what are we talking about here, guys? We got to talk about this car. When the Subaru Impreza WRX hit the World Rally circuit and the motorsports circuit, everything changed. We're talking about 1992, 93, 94. This is where Subaru really made its bones. All those dues that Subaru paid in previous decades, particularly in the 80s, began to pay dividends when they introduced the Impreza platform. Subaru got it right. They started winning. You had Colin McRae, the legendary rally driver, okay? All the success and accolades that this car achieved really paved the way for what was to come with this car in the consumer market. So there it is, the little blue car that could. The little blue car with the gold wheels was really born in that early 90s era, that 92, 93, 94, 95, 96. This is where it all began. Okay? Now, a couple things about this, and let's take another look here. Something perhaps a bit more modern in the WRX realm. So here we are, right? This car, as I mentioned, didn't even exist for all intents and purposes in the US. It wasn't even on the radar of most Americans 25 years ago, which I think is fascinating. And the reason I say that is when you think about the incredible following this has for, I'll say, young people from the 20s up till, 25, 30, 35 years old, 40 years old, like none of your fathers were into Subarus. Your fathers were probably muscle car guys. Maybe they were exotic car guys. But it's not like you learned your love of Subaru as an enthusiast from your dad or from your grandfather. The interesting thing about the Subaru WRX following, guys, for me anyway, leave me comments if you feel differently, is that this was an automotive platform, an enthusiast's platform in a car that was unique to that generation. If you were coming up as a young man in the late 90s, coming of age, if you will, you're starting to drive, you're playing the video games, you're starting to get into cars and the hobby, you probably weren't into muscle cars, and the classic stuff from the 60s and 70s. Again, that was probably your grandfather, your father's stuff. This car was something that generation of young people who were coming of age, as I mentioned, late 90s to early 2000s, getting their driver's license, becoming automotive enthusiasts. This was a car that was attainable, that was tangible, that was uniquely theirs. This wasn't, well, my father was into Camaros or Mustangs, so that's what I'm into. This was, hey, this is a car for my generation. This car speaks to me. And I think you can't talk about the Subaru WRX without talking about the video games. Guys, hear me out. This is not a gamers channel. What channel is this? This is Hot Seat Automotive Podcast. But guys, real talk tonight, the significance of like the Gran Turismo, the Test Drive, the Forza. If you don't think that those video games didn't play a role in the propagation and the interest in the Subaru WRX, you're wrong. You're way wrong. You have to realize that video games like Gran Turismo, Test Drive, and Forza played a huge role in promoting and turning on young people to the Subaru WRX and the STI. The hot Subarus became something really cool and fun and of interest to young people circa mid to late 90s, early 2000s. Video games played a huge part. Almost anybody you talk to, younger automotive enthusiasts up until like the 30s, 35, even 40 years old, if you talk to them, they probably played video games and were driving the Subaru WRX or STI with a controller, right? On the PlayStation or the Dreamcast or the Xbox, long before they actually drove one in the United States. Big facts. Leave me comments if you first got into the Subaru WRX based on video games. You know, I think this cannot be overstated. There is a huge integration between the gamers and specifically the race game enthusiasts and what would become automotive enthusiasts. Because all those young dudes who were playing those video games, the Gran Turismo, the Test Drive, the Forza, when they came of age, they wanted a Subaru WRX. They wanted a Mitsubishi Lancer Evo, okay? Or other cars, but in particular these, because they were attainable. They were tangible. These were not six-figure cars. You could get an Impreza or a WRX, okay? And you could make it your own. And it was cool. So a couple of important things to note about sort of the history of this car. Let's keep going, guys. Hopefully you're having fun, as much fun as I am talking about this. You know, I think it's important to note a couple of things about this car. You know, over the years, there have been multiple generations of the WRX. You know, we didn't get the WRX in this country until, I believe, 2002. You need to know that there was a bug eye. Who knows about the bug eye? This is Subaru stuff you got to know. You're not a Subaru WRX dude unless you know these things. You got to know about the bug eye, those round headlights that I think have really come into their own. It's kind of like with certain Porsches, the headlights. For years, people would shame certain Porsche headlights in certain generations, and now they've kind of come into their own. I think it's kind of a similar thing, interestingly enough, with the WRX, which also has horizontally opposed engines, boxer engines, so to speak. You also had your blob eyes, I believe came out in 2004, and then ultimately the Hawkeye. The Hawkeye WRXs came out in 2006. So again, this is Subaru speak, you know? Again, a car that didn't even exist in the US 25 years ago has this massive, loyal following of automotive enthusiasts. A whole sub-area of our hobby has sprung up. It's a beautiful thing around the Subaru WRX. And it's a car, you know, that's not for everybody. And if it goes all the way back to the Subaru Brat and those Subaru wagons, they were kind of obscure, kind of different. If you wanted a pickup truck, go buy your Ford F-150 back in the day. Go buy your Dodge. Go buy your Chevrolet. If you wanted your station wagon, you could buy a big old Buick. But back then, if you wanted that off-road capability, all-weather coupled with Japanese reliability and economically priced car, okay, Subaru offered you some cool options. Again, it wasn't meant to be a car for everybody. From a styling standpoint, with that, you know, the raked stance of those cars, even back in the day, those off-road utility wheels that they just had a whole vibe that was different from the Honda or the Toyota or the Nissan of that era, okay? Fast forward to today, the Subaru WRX still, and even in the past 10, 15 years, has not been the car for everybody. You know, this is a performance, rally-inspired car, all-wheel drive, four-cylinder, horizontally opposed, turbo engine, okay, that responds well to bolt-ons, might I say, and tuning, okay? So, again, a very specialized area of the automotive enthusiast hobby. You know, and this car really caught on great guns, and it's great to see. And the other thing I like about these is the concept of the factory hot rod. hear me out, guys. From the Impreza base platform, you had the WRX, then you had the WRX STI, that Subaru Technica International, which is sort of the higher tuning from an engine suspension standpoint, the more aggressive wings, all the things that give it sort of that motorsports, that rally feel. These are factory hot rods. And that harkens back to decades before. But the cool thing about Subaru is they did it for a whole new generation. So, right, you got Impreza base, then you got WRX, then I got my STI, then you've got some of the special editions that came after that. At various points, there were all kinds of different limited edition STIs. So, Subaru really developed a following here, dating back to what I claim all started with, their motorsports heritage when the Impreza came out. Combine that, the building of the brand through the global motorsports awareness, but then how it caught fire, particularly late 90s into the early 2000s with gamers, the gaming generation, PlayStation, Xbox, Dreamcast, you name it. Okay? These kids, through Gran Turismo, through Test Drive, through Forza, got turned on to cars that they couldn't even drive in the US. You couldn't even drive an STI in the US when these kids were playing it on the video game. And when these cars came to the US in 2002 and beyond, the WRX, STI and beyond, these kids lost their mind. You know what they wanted to do when they turned 16, 17, 18, 21? They wanted to go out and buy a Subaru WRX. It's an incredible story. And if I go back again 30 to 40 years ago in the Subaru brand, not so much. They were the mom car, the family car, the utility car, the daily driver, with a bit of an obscure market. So really cool what Subaru did there, I think. Guys, let's talk, if you're going to talk about the Subaru Impreza and the WRX, I think it's super important that we talk about a couple of other cars too. So, first of all, look at this. So I think every car has a rival. There's always a nemesis. And I would say that the Mitsubishi Lancer Evo is the nemesis to the Subaru WRX and WRX STI. And I think this harkens back to some extent. Let me know if you agree in the comments or if you feel differently. The video game generation, the racing games, guys playing Forza and Test Drive and Gran Turismo, pitting these cars against each other. But then, it manifested itself in the real world. Because when these guys came of age, these are the cars they wanted. Movies, the Fast and the Furious films came out, and it really added fuel to the fire for a whole new generation of automotive enthusiasts. You weren't interested in your dad's Chevelle or your grandfather's Mopar. That was so done. You weren't interested. Cars like the Subaru WRX or the Mitsubishi Lancer Evo, these were cars for a whole new generation that were uniquely theirs. These weren't your father's, your grandfather's cars. These were cars for a new generation of automotive enthusiasts. And I claim it's just an absolutely wonderful thing. But these cars are indeed rivals, and I think it's really kind of cool. Guys, a couple other things I want to talk about. I think it's important to talk about some other options in the market. So this is a Volkswagen Golf GTI. And I think if we're going to talk about the Subaru WRX, and for that matter, the WRX STI, what else is out there in the market at a similar price point? I would say that the Volkswagen Golf GTIs are indeed competition, dare I say, for the Subaru WRX market. I say that the cars check a lot of the same boxes. Now, the regular Golf GTI is not all-wheel drive, but has a lot of the same utility. The other cool thing about a Golf GTI is that it has a heritage, okay? Even going back further, I believe, than the WRX. The Golf GTIs really have a full-on heritage for automotive enthusiasts and are really cool cars. And they respond well to tuning and downpipes and bolt-ons and all of those things. Similar experience to what like the WRX crowd gets or the Mitsubishi Lancer crowd. But what I'll say it's German versus Japanese, right? It's just a different experience, but nonetheless, if you're going to talk about one, you kind of have to talk about the other. And I think as an automotive enthusiast or someone who's looking to get, hey, I'm an automotive enthusiast, I'm a car guy, but I only have the budget to get one car that I also need to use as my daily driver. And it's got to be functional. It's got to have some utility. I got to be able to do my road trips with it and transport my friends and all these other things and go grocery shopping with it. The Volkswagen GTI certainly ticks all those boxes, as does the WRX. So again, these are fantastic cars that not only do they provide you with reliable and fun daily transportation, they're also enthusiast cars. Like, people will talk to you about them, and you can show up to Cars and Coffee and be with other like-minded enthusiasts, which is kind of cool, which is one of the wonderful things about cars like this. Guys, now we're going to get controversial. Now the time has come to get controversial. What are we talking about here? The new WRX. Can we talk? Guys, can we talk about the new WRX? Okay. First things first, I'm glad to see that there is a new WRX. This new generation came out for the 2022 model year. It's got that horizontally opposed turbo engine. You can get it in a 6-speed manual. Fantastic. There's also a CVT, automatic transmission version. Okay. I think that something was lost here. This is just for me. There was a loss of the edginess and styling. I think they went a bit safe with the new WRX and its styling. That's just for me. I'd love to hear what you think. I don't think it's bad, but I think it lost some of its edginess. I don't hear a lot of people talking about this car. When this car hit the market, I think there was a collective sigh or maybe even a bit of a yawn from automotive enthusiasts, especially if you were hoping for sort of the best and the brightest in a significant bump in performance. You didn't get it. Subaru guys, I don't think you got it. I think you were a bit let down by Subaru with this new WRX. They don't have that burble, that rumble from an exhaust standpoint. I think that these are very civilized cars. I think they are fantastic. The utility's there. I think they are fun, but the cool factor came down a couple of notches. Subaru guys, do you agree with me? I think there was a bit of a miss, but perhaps not. I mean, the numbers will tell the story, I suppose, but maybe they're moving towards the middle. This is Subaru moving from sort of that niche market, perhaps a bit more to the middle, to make the WRX a car that anyone can consume. I mean, look at the cladding around the wheel wells. I guess that's kind of cool, but I'm not a huge fan of the look. It begins to blend in, I think, a bit more with sort of the rest of the market. Let's take a look at another shot together of the new WRX. Here's another shot of it, guys. Again, it's not a bad looking car. I still think that it has some of that off-road capability, that rough look, It's got the cladding around the wheel wells, those flares, It's got the little hood scoop, but not as edgy as previous generations. I think if they had gone maybe a little more retro, a little more aggressive with the WRX, it would have endeared itself more to the automotive enthusiast and specifically to the Subaru guy. Especially now in the era with, dare I say, the threat of going all EV. This may be the last internal combustion engine WRX that we see. Not sure. That's kind of what they're hinting at. Why not send it out with a bang? Why not give us the WRX we've been waiting for? Performance specs have been kind of flat for these cars out of the factory. It's not like there was one year in the past few years where there was a huge bump that pushed it up into a whole nother bracket. They've always kind of hovered around 250, 270, 280, up to 300 horsepower-ish, plus or minus. From a WRX STI standpoint. Now, these cars can produce big numbers with tunes and bolt-ons. There are guys getting big numbers out of these, no doubt. but I'm talking about out of the factory. There was really nothing in this newest generation of WRX that inherently got car guys crazy. Not that I heard. Here's the other thing. You ready? They're not building an internal combustion engine STI at this point. So, guys, that's a disappointment. And Subaru, I understand business. I think a lot of us do, and we appreciate that maybe you did the numbers and it didn't make sense. But for your everyday automotive enthusiast, and I think for your loyal Subaru WRX diehard, they're crying in their cornflakes. They're not happy about it, guys. And I know I'm not happy about it. I was kind of excited to see the next STI. What I think we're getting teased at is an STI that's either going to be hybrid or more likely an EV. So we're not going to see the fulfillment of the ultimate WRX STI internal combustion engine at the peak of engineering and development out of the factory. We're probably not going to get it. And that to me is kind of a miss. I would have also liked to have seen maybe a dual clutch. Maybe that would have taken it too far up market, but no, I don't think so. I mean, listen, the Volkswagen Golf GTI is available with a dual clutch, and they have a following. They are really good cars with some really good performance. Why not trick one of these out with a dual clutch? Instead, they did the CVT transmission. Not thrilled about that. Guys, from a price point standpoint, and let's take a look again. Let's take a look again at the other screen here. Let's take a look at this. If you're in the market for one of these, your buddy CJ is going to give it to you straight. If you're in the market for a WRX, there's a couple of red flags we got to consider. One, a lot of these cars have been tuned and built and modified. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. And hell, that's a part of our hobby. I'm a huge proponent of that. But if you're buying one on the secondary market, you just got to go in eyes wide open. I want you to be eyes wide open that the car may have been wrenched on by a bunch of different people. You may or may not know who did the work, what's been done. Is it about ready to lose its head gasket and melt down? Does it run like a bag of hammers? Like, these are all things. Has it been over boosted? Has it been overheated? I don't know, and you may not either. So if I was buying one of these, I would probably want to find an unmolested example. Number one, be very careful. And, if you say, well, CJ, I'm going to take my chances. This one's already built and it's built just the way I want to and the price is right. I'm happy for you. I want you to buy the car and love it. But I also want you to avoid buying something that's going to give you troubles because it had a bunch of work done on it by a bunch of people and you got a whole kettle of fish. The thing is a can of worms. I don't want you to get that. So be sure you do your research. The good news about these is there's a WRX for anybody. If you wanted to go new, 35 to 50 grand, you can get as much new WRX as you want. There are a lot of them out there. If you're into the new ones and you want something brand new, your first new car, and it's fun and it's zippy and it's all-wheel drive and it's turbo and it's a manual and it's got all the features you want, you can get a lot of car there, between 35 and 50K. I would suggest you go look at the Golfs, the Volkswagen Golfs, the GTIs. I think they're great cars. Okay. Look at your options there, but the WRX, they're still making them and they are fantastic cars. I think they lost a little something with the styling, and maybe it's a bit of a disappointment that we didn't get more of a performance bump, but it is what it is. In that 25K, let's say, to 40K range in the used market, you can get just about any WRX you want. There are STIs available. Okay. You can still get the STIs from the previous gen and the gen before that. Again, lower mileage examples will cost you almost as much as a brand new WRX, but that's a decision only you can make. If you're not sold on the new WRX, you can find, previous gen, 2 gens back with low miles on them, 2019, 2020 STI for about the same money with super low miles. Go for it. They're also very special, limited edition models. The 209, so on and so forth. I mean, those cars will be 65K, 70K, 80K, 90K. I mean, those are big money cars, particularly for a Subaru. and God knows competition of all the other things you could get for that money. But if you're in that income bracket, dare I say, with that much disposable income, and you got to have a Subaru, there's some cool ones out there, but you're going to pay for it. And again, there is a Subaru WRX for everybody. And the good news is you're getting that Japanese reliability, something that's reasonable, that can be dailied, that can be relied upon. It's got the all-wheel drive. Now, if you go and build it and tune it and lower it and put wider tires on it and racing tires and all that, you're going to take away some of that utility and maybe make it more of a harsh car. That's up to you, but just things to consider. I claim these are extremely fun, tossable cars that can make daily driving just about as much of an automotive enthusiast as you can automotive enthusiast experience as you can possibly have. You know, it's like World Rally Championship every day driving around town, right? In a Subaru WRX. So again, they're very cool cars for so many reasons. For so many reasons, the WRX is a cool car. And I'm going to reiterate, 25 years ago, this car basically did not exist in the US. You know, unless you were following the World Rally Championship, Global Motorsports, and you happened to be a Subaru enthusiast way back when, you probably didn't know what a WRX was. It's only, I claim, when the video game generation caught on to this car, through Forza, through Test Drive, through Gran Turismo, a whole generation of young people who were probably never really into cars per se. They certainly never drove one. They were young people. It wasn't their father's Camaro or Mustang or their grandfather's Mopar. They discovered these cool little Subarus, all-wheel drive, the blue car with the gold wheels. The blue car with the gold wheels that could tear up the track and could run circles around more expensive exotics. It captured the imagination of a whole new generation of automotive enthusiasts. And when those young people got their driver's license and they got their first jobs or they got out of college, they went and they bought a Subaru WRX. And many of them were hooked for life. And now they've had their second and third and fourth WRX. And they've had an STI and they've built it and they've tuned it and they've had it on the dyno and they're high performance cars. And they're a member of the Subaru WRX club and they meet and they do their road trips and their mountain runs. So why do I share all that? Why am I so excited about that? I mean, Subaru sold tens of thousands of these cars, thousands and thousands globally. But what's significant to me is the following that these cars have established. It's become a sub-area of our hobby as automotive enthusiasts. And I claim that was the convergence of all these things. Subaru Motorsports, the video game culture, all of these things coming together, the Fast and the Furious films. If you don't think that played a role in turning people onto this car, you're wrong. You're dead wrong. You have to agree with me. Come on, leave me comments if you feel differently. Guys, that's about it tonight for the Subaru WRX. I'd love to hear from you. Give me a like and subscribe. Leave me comments. I reply to all the comments I can. Really love you guys. I appreciate you watching the episode tonight. Subaru WRX and WRX STI. All hail and long live the Impreza. Are we going to get an STI with an internal combustion engine? Probably not. But maybe it'll be a cool EV. I don't know, guys. What do you think? But anyway, that's about it for this episode of Hot Seat Automotive Podcast. It's your buddy CJ signing off. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.